Hello everyone and welcome to GameFlix Max. My name is Dan and I am your resident video game reviewer. Today we are going to be taking a journey through a mystical land. From riding on brooms to casting Avada Kedavra, today we are talking about Hogwarts Legacy. So sit back, relax, grab some popcorn or any other snack of your choosing, or no snack at all. I'm not your boss. And enjoy the video. Also, the theme music for this game is the same as the movies and is extremely copyrighted. So enjoy this intro music instead. Okay, let's start here with the gameplay of Hogwarts Legacy. During my time playing this game, I found that this game has a lot of really good and bad elements when it comes to gameplay. As far as basic mechanics go, I feel like this game went a bit overboard. My first problem is that the climbing mechanics are very weird and glitchy. Like sometimes I would climb a certain distance and it would work, you know? Like I would shimmy up, right? And then I would try to climb the same distance up a rock or something and it wouldn't work. It didn't always work. I don't know why. Then also on top of that, they overdid it a bit on the traveling vehicles. So you guys know how in open world games, usually the character has a horse or a car or something that lets them move faster from place to place. Well, this game has a grand total of 3 of those, even though most games only have 1. There's one ground animal called a Graphorn that can pretty much demolish anything in its path. Pretty good. Though this was my least favorite of the 3. Then, when it came to flying in the air, they had not 1, but 2 means of transportation. You had a broom, and you also had an eagle-like creature called a hippogriff that you could fly as well. These 2 flying things have pretty much nothing that makes you prefer one to the other, so I just used a little bit of both. Though as far as the rest of the basic mechanics go, it's fine. The movement is pretty smooth. You have a couple of spells that aren't for combat, like Lumos that lets you light up the dark so you can see. Wingardium Leviosa, Accio, Depulso, Flipendo, and Leviosa can help you a lot in all the different puzzles that they have in the game. Then also there's a spell that you can cast called Revelio that reveals stuff in your location. Which I hate it when open world games don't have a feature like this because it can make it really hard to find things, especially when you're trying to 100% the game, which I did. Also, there were some doors that were locked in this game that you had to use a spell called the Lohomora to unlock. This is fine because after you cast a spell, it sends you inside of the lock so that you have to turn the gears to unlock the pin and stuff, which doesn't make any sense because in the book and in the movies, once you cast a Lohomora, the caster didn't actually have to do anything. It would just the spell would just unlock the lock for you. So I don't know. There was literally no need. It added almost nothing besides another tedious task that you had to do. So yeah, the basic mechanics of this game are not too bad, but also there's nothing that stands out all too much about them. Probably the best part of the gameplay in this game is the combat, specifically the combat mechanics. So there are a couple of different aspects of the combat in this game. So first you have the basic cast, which just shoots a red blast out and does a tiny amount of damage. I like I like this because it makes it feel more fun. Like it makes it feel more fun, unlike in the books when most of the combat was just people standing around shooting beams at each other, and that was it. There was no like skill or anything really involved, no strategy. It was just beams going everywhere. Then as for defense, they had a spell called Protego, which protected you from like minor enemy attacks. Though like there are some attacks that were like more powerful, that were too powerful for Protego, so you'd have to dodge them. The dodging in this game is fine. It's very similar to dodging in like a Souls game. Also, they use little indicators to signal when an enemy is about to attack you and whether it is blockable or not. The orange circles mean that they are blockable, and the red that are a little bit bigger mean that they aren't and you have to try to dodge them. Then the first and biggest means of dealing more damage than just the basic cast, or even just stunning an enemy, is with a huge assortment of spells that you can learn and cast. There are 4 different types of spells that you can use in combat. Control spells, force spells, damage spells, and yes, you can learn the unforgivable curses as well, which actually are pretty useful. They got me out of a lot of sticky situations. Basically, the control spells can limit like an enemy's movement. Force spells are like exactly as they sound. They can either push an enemy, pull an enemy, push an enemy down, or flip an enemy. Then damage is probably the most self-explanatory of them all. The damage spells do damage. Then unforgivable curses are the 3 unforgivable curses from the books. The killing curse, the controlling curse. I don't know if it's actually called the controlling curse in the books or not, but I don't know what it actually is. It's Imperio. And then the torture curse. In the game, the killing curse one-shots almost any enemy. It depends on the enemy's level compared to yours. If they were a high enough level, it would still do like a significant amount of damage, but it wouldn't kill them completely. The controlling curse makes an enemy help you fight their comrades. And then finally, the torture curse, which is the most boring of the 3. It just makes it so your attacks do a little more damage. As far as spells go, there's a very wide variety of these spells, and there are literally hundreds of different combos that you can create, and is probably the best aspect of the combat. Everything else kind of feels unneeded just because this exists. Then besides spells, you also have something called ancient magic, which is part of the story, and I will explain that more in the story part of the review. Basically, you can use ancient magic to throw a certain object at the enemy, which then does a significant amount of damage to them. Then you also like have a ancient magic meter, and when one of the bars fills up, you can use a special attack on an enemy that does more damage than like the normal spells. These attacks can be really helpful getting you out of like a sticky situation, but I found that the unforgivable curses were more effectful as like an ultimate attack. But the ancient magic is still pretty good. Okay, now there are also potions and combat plants that you can use. Basically, you can brew all sorts of potions and grow 3 types of combat plants. I don't know why they added the combat plants. That's not even something in the books or the movies or anything, but whatever. Let's talk about the potions first. It is at this point that I feel like they added just a bit too much to the combat portion of this game, because most of these potions just don't seem worth it to me. Like, the Wiggenweld potion is probably the only one I used consistently, because the Wiggenweld potion is what you use to heal yourself in this game. Though, most of the time I found myself just forgetting about these potions and plants when I went into battle. Not to say that they aren't useful, I used a couple potions a little consistently. And those potions that I used a little consistently are the Maxima potion and the Invisibility potion. I'll talk more about the invisibility potion later when I talk about stealth. The Maxima potion made it so that for a short duration of time your spells did a little bit more damage than usual, which came in useful sometimes when I was in like a sticky situation, but like I said before, I forgot about it most of the time, and I was able to deal enough damage perfectly fine with just the wide arrangement of spells. The other potions that are available for you to brew are the Endurance Potion, which turns you into a rock, and enemies can't do damage to you. Focus Potion, which shortens the cooldown on your spells. Then finally, Thunderbolt Potion, which starts a storm around you that strikes lightning that damages enemies. But that doesn't really make sense, because how can a potion that you drink cause a storm? I don't know. But then as far as plants go, I only really use the mandrakes, which are those plants that scream very loud. And the effect, they just stun your enemies for a short period of time, and which can be useful when they start swarming you. The other combat plants are the Chinese chomping cabbages and the venomous tactalia. The cabbage literally did damage to them. It wasn't not really that significant damage either. And I don't even know what the venomous tactalia did. It kind of just stood there and didn't. I don't know what it did. It just stood there. I didn't look like it did any damage to the enemies. Didn't look like it did anything to the enemies. Though overall, I think the potions and combat plants were just I could have done without them. Now for the stealth. It's kind of obvious in this game that they don't promote stealth all that much. If you want to be sneaky, you can either use the Disillusionment Charm or the Invisibility Potion. The difference being that the Disillusionment Charm made it so that you were only harder to see but still somewhat visible, and the potion made it so that enemies couldn't see you at all, even if you were like right next to them. Then if you wanted to do a sneaky takedown, you could sneak up behind enemies and then cast a spell that I'm not even gonna attempt. I don't remember how you pronounce it. But the problem with this is that if they were too high a level, it would only do a certain, it wouldn't actually do all the damage needed to take them down. It would only do a little bit it would only do like a certain amount of damage, and then they were like, oh my god, a bunch of damage just happened to me, and they would find you and everyone would start going you. So in the end, just don't use stealth. The regular combat is fine. Almost done with the combat, I swear. The last thing I want to talk about was upgrades. So in this game, you can find / buy different gear that you can use to up your stats. Then you can also upgrade the gear that you got and add different charms to them, which did different give you different advantages in battle. And you had to put the charms in and to do the upgrades on the gear, you had to use beast fur, which you could get by rescuing and harvesting beasts, which I'll talk more about later. Then also you had these things called talent points, which allowed you to buy different skills, which added a bunch of different aspects to your spells and potions and stuff. But you only have 40 talent points and there are more than 40 skills, so choose your skills wisely. So the combat in this game is very broad, but I kind of like that. I think they just went a little bit... I think they just could have done without the potions, besides Wiggenweld, and the combat plants. But other than that, it was pretty good. Okay, so the different levels in this game are pretty good. The game does what any game should, and it gets progressively harder as the game goes on. The combat levels don't feel too overbearing. Also, the puzzles are decently challenging, especially the Depulso puzzles. If I had one complaint about the missions in this game, it would be the boss fights, or as they would call them, infamous foes. The boss fights in this game are way too easy. The hardest one is the final boss fight, and also is the only fight in the game that I would actually consider challenging. If you wanted to, you could literally just use Avada Kedavra on any boss and it would kill them instantly. But like a really quick side note, the final boss is kind of stupid because you know how in like most open world games, when you get to like the final quest, they usually are like, okay, this is the final quest. And now is your last chance to do any upgrades or get any supplies that you need to do the final part of the game. Well, they don't do that in this game. Maybe the final boss fight wasn't actually as hard as I thought it was, but it just felt hard because I went into it with only one Wiggenweld potion. That was really annoying, but besides that, all of the missions in this game were pretty well thought out and fun. Okay, if you want to 100% this game, there is a lot that you need to do. First of all, you have to complete all of the challenges, which include combat challenges, quest challenges, exploration challenges, field guide page challenges, and finally, room of requirement challenges. So the combat challenges are actually really simple. You just need to defeat a certain amount of every type of enemy in the game, and also complete a certain amount of dueling feats, which are like little challenges that they give you whenever you enter a combat situation, like use the pulso on an enemy or whatever. The combat challenges are probably the easiest of all the challenges, and I was able to complete most of them just by playing the game. Then next you have quest challenges, which are literally just completing every main and side quest and relationship quest in the game. Which relationship quests are quests tied to specific characters. And I'll get more into that in the story part of this. Next, you have the exploration challenges, which consist of a bunch of different puzzles that you need to do throughout the entire world. The first one is landing platforms, which is probably, I don't even know why they added this one. You literally just need to find these platforms and land on them. And that's all you needed to do. There's nothing more than that. Then another one that's kind of stupid is popping balloons, which is another, it just really, like, why even add it in the game? It adds almost nothing besides something that I have to go out of my way to do. You just fly into a bunch of balloons and pop them. Then we get into, and then another one that's kind of stupid is the ancient magic spots, which is when you activate it, you need to find like 3 glowy things in like a building or a confined place or something. And I think in these puzzles you're supposed to like climb and find your way around the building, but I just ended up using my broom most of the time and it worked. So these are pretty easy. Then you also have astronomy tables, which are one of the more fun ones, I feel like, and also kind of feel like an actual challenge. Basically, you go up to these tables and you have to align the stars with like the constellation that you're supposed to be finding. It's pretty good. I got stuck in a couple of them. Then next you have Merlin trials, which are like a bunch of different puzzles that you need to do around the map in order to gain more gear slots so that you can get more gear. These are pretty easy, and for some reason, there's like way too many of these challenges, by the way, and they didn't come up with a different like puzzle for each one. They just used the same ones over and over again. So I'm gonna list all of them now. You had the ones where you needed to light the braziers with using like Incendio or something. Then the one where you needed to destroy a bunch of pillars. Then one where you needed to destroy a bunch of balls, getting real creative. One where you need to get a ball into a hole, like golf. One where you needed to get a bunch of balls into a hole. One where you needed to parkour. One where you needed to flip a stone to match different symbols. And finally, my least favorite one is the one where you need to find a bunch of fireflies and use Lumos to put them in like these box things. I hated these ones. Those ones, you couldn't use Revelio to find the fireflies, and it was just very annoying. Anyways, they just repeat these for all of the Merlin challenges, and there are a lot of them. Then finally you have Hogwarts Secrets, which are 3 puzzles that exist inside the school Hogwarts grounds, and each and every one of them are pretty easy. And each and every one of them I accidentally stumbled upon, so there was one where I had to look up a guide, but the other ones, they're pretty easy. Then next you have the field guide pages, which are like these little pages that you need to gather that give you like a bunch of different lore. The way you find these pages is by using Revelio or using Accio on like little flying pages, or using Incendio or Confringo on the Dragon Braziers, or using Levioso on like these statue things, or by solving like these moth puzzles where you used Lumos to light up a picture and then you had to find the location on that picture. And at that location you'll find a moth, which you then need to use Lumos to lead back to the painting. And once you did that, it would give you a field guide page. So, and then there's like a bunch of these field guide pages scattered all around the map in each of the 3 main locations. And the 3 main locations are the Highlands, which are basically is the world surrounding Hogwarts. Then also Hogwarts itself, obviously. And finally Hogsmeade. Then finally you have the Room of Requirement challenges, which consist mostly of different like beast related challenges. Which beasts are like a bunch of different animals that you can capture in the game, and then you can breed them and you can harvest like their fur to upgrade your gear, like I said in the other part of the gameplay. So the challenges that you need to do in the Room of Requirement is you had to breed a certain amount of unique types of beasts, you had to rescue a certain amount of beasts, and then you also had to add a certain amount of upgrades to your gear, which the Room of Requirement is probably the easiest of all the challenges. I know I said the combat challenges were the easiest, but I take that back. This was the easiest. Okay. Then on top of all these challenges, you also have to complete all the collections to 100% the game, which are basically a bunch of different objects that you collect throughout the game. And you get these objects by just like encountering them, finding them in collection chests, which you have to find throughout the world, finding them in butterfly challenges, which are like these things where you find butterflies and you follow them, and then when you get to where they're going, there's a chest and you get a collection item. Or you can buy them at vendors. Or you can complete these combat arena things to get some collection outfits. And then finally, the final method of getting these collection items is by completing quests. But if you do everything that the game has to offer you, you shouldn't have any problem with these collections. Overall, I find all of this extra stuff a bit tedious, and it was not that much fun to do. It really wasn't. Not a very good game to 100%. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before I do my final rating for the gameplay is the menu navigation. This is especially important in RPG games, which this is an RPG game. I feel like the menu navigation in this game was pretty good considering I was playing with an Xbox controller. You could open up the menu and easily navigate to wherever you wanted to go. It wasn't complicated. And there was like a separate button on the controller for the map, which made it so it was easier just to pull up the map if you need it. And I was always fine where I needed to go in the menu pretty easily. Also, the menus themselves were simple and to the point, which I liked. So taking all of that into consideration, I think I'm going to be giving the gameplay of Hogwarts Legacy a 9 out of 10. For the most part, everything was good, and I really liked the combat mechanics. The only thing holding it back from a 10 out of 10 is the tedious extra stuff you have to do to 100% it. Okay, finally, we are done with the gameplay, and now we're moving on to the story. Let's first talk about the characters. The protagonist is you. You get to create your own character, and there are like a bunch of different customizations that you can do. There's like a bunch of different hairstyles, skin tones, eye colors. Like, I'm pretty sure they have different eye shapes too, different types of eyebrows. You can have a scar on your face if you want. Whole bunch of stuff. All sorts of different hair colors. Yeah. But basically, you are a new student coming in, starting as a 5th year at Hogwarts School of Shit. But you're special because you have an ability called Ancient Magic, which is, well, actually, I don't really know what it is. They never really explain exactly what it is. You can just use it, and nobody else can even really see it besides the other people who can also use it. But now you have to learn how to like hone this power and do a bunch of trials and to become the next keeper. Keepers are basically people that protect this power from falling into the wrong hands. Okay, so now let's talk about the antagonist, which is a goblin named Ranrock. Ranrock is the leader of the Goblin Revolution. Oh boy. Because he hates wizard kind and he wants to take them down, you know. But ironically, he has a dark wizard named Victor Rookwood who works with him. So does he actually hate wizards? I don't know. There's a lot of plot holes in this story, just like the books. Okay, now to the there's a lot of supporting characters, but I'm just gonna name the most important supporting characters. I'd say that there's 10 main supporting characters that are like the most important to the story. 2 professors, 3 classmates, 4 keepers, and 1 goblin that is not Ranrock. The 2 professors are Professor Weasley and Professor Fig. Professor Weasley is the assistant headmaster and also the transfiguration teacher or something like that. But she's basically the headmaster because the actual headmaster, Professor Black, is an idiot. And that's one of like the little like subplots in this. She is in charge of like most of like your studies throughout the entire story. She's in charge of like the Hogwarts student part of the story. And then Professor Fig is basically like the Dumbledore to your Harry Potter. He's your mentor and the one helping you along with like your ancient magic journey. Then the students are the 3 students which you have those relationship quests that I mentioned before with, which are basically they're all different quest lines for each of these friendships. The most important one, it seems, is Sebastian, who is in Slytherin and has a twin sister named Anne who is really sick. And basically his whole story is you explore the dark arts with him to find a way to save his sister and get into all sorts of trouble. He is also how you learn, his questline is how you learn the unforgivable curses. Quick note, you can choose, if you want to get like a good ending where you don't support the dark arts, then you cannot learn the unforgivable curses and then go back after the main story and learn them. So, or at least I've been told. I learned them straight away, but yeah. Then there's Nazi, which that is how you pronounce her name. Okay, I actually looked it up here and it's actually Natsai, not Nazi. It's spelled N-A-S-T-S. No, it's not. I'm so tired. It's spelled N-A-T-S-A-I, not how I am going to spell it. So that's on me. Sorry, guys. Okay, back to the rest of the video. It's spelled N-A-T-S-I. So I don't know why they decided to give her that name, but we're just going to ignore it and move on. And her quest line is probably the most boring of the three, in my personal opinion. It is basically just you against like this dark wizard named Harlow. And if I'm being honest, I wasn't really paying much attention to this, so I don't really know what it actually was about. Then finally, you have my personal favorite of the three students, and also probably my favorite character in the entire game, and that is Poppy Sweeting. Sweeting? Something like that. She just reminds me of my little sister. So, and her quest line is you two stopping like a bunch of like poachers from poaching beasts. It sounds simple, but it's pretty fun. I'm not gonna lie. Also, if I'm being honest, these relationship quests kind of carry the story. Next, we have the Keepers. I don't actually remember any of their names, but they are important to the story. I promise you. But they are kind of forgettable too. They're basically these four dead guys who used to have like the ancient magic ability, and you're doing all of their trials and looking into their memories to learn about the dangers of the power. Then finally you have Lodgok, which is he's a goblin, and he's like the good goblin. He's the good one of the bad guys. And he helps you out because he doesn't want a war between goblins and wizards. There's nothing wrong with him, but there's also nothing that is particularly exciting about him either. Okay, so this game is set in Hogwarts, obviously, and all the surrounding lands. As for the time period, I looked it up, and apparently the story takes place in the late 1800s, so like, I think around the same time as like the Old West. So it's way before the Harry Potter story, because the Harry Potter story takes place in the late 1900s. So pretty much 100 years before the Harry Potter story. If I recall correctly, I watched all the Harry Potter movies. Hogwarts looks a lot different from in the movies. But Hogwarts seemed like it changed in pretty much every movie, so that wasn't really a turnoff for me. The world it's fine. It's fine. So I already went into like the conflict a little bit earlier, but basically Ranrock is trying to destroy all of wizard kind using a magic that you actually find out later in the story stems from the ancient magic that you can use. Since you are the new keeper of this magic, it's your job to stop him and save the wizarding world. It's pretty corny, if I'm going to be honest, but also if I'm being honest, what do you expect from a Harry Potter story? Am I right? I know there's a lot of diehard fans of the franchise, but like, come on. I'm not. You can probably tell by now I'm not that big of a fan of the Harry Potter story. So basically, the plot of this story is that you're trying to catch up, since you're a new student starting as a 5th year. So like you're really behind. You like don't know anything. So you have to catch up by doing extra assignments that let you learn a spell after completing said assignments. So you also have all of those like relationship plots that I was talking about, but then also you need to complete each of the trials that these keepers are giving you, so that you can learn like how to use your ancient magic so that you can defeat Ranrock, because ancient magic is the only way. And throughout these trials, you learn about this person named Isadora, who basically found a way to use ancient magic to take away pain and turn it into power. But it didn't just take away pain from the person, it also took away their emotions. And basically you see her fall into like madness. And the keepers actually kill her using Avada Kedavra, which is, I feel like, kind of ironic. But the keepers are doing these trials because they don't want you to end up like her. The story itself is pretty basic, but honestly I think They were focused more on the gameplay than the story of this game. And the last thing I'm going to talk about the story is the dialogue. The dialogue in this game is very cringy, but also Harry Potter game. How many times do I have to repeat this? So in this game, all of your classmates are like the same age as like a freshman in high school. And they say all sorts of things that sound like they're coming from like a kindergartner. Okay, even the adults talk this way, but it's just a Harry Potter thing, because obviously no one in a mystical, magical world can talk like an adult. Taking into account all that I just said, it wasn't necessarily a bad story. It was just really, really basic, and there's like also a lot of plot holes that didn't get explained or were just weird. But that is just something with Harry Potter. They don't need to explain anything. It's just magic, you know. It's very stupid, but you know what? What do I know? Oh. Anyways, I give the story of Hogwarts Legacy a 7 out of 10. Not the worst story in the world, but has a pretty decent amount of room for improvement. As far as replayability is concerned, I think that this game has okay replayability. I think that the biggest factor that would make people like want to replay this game is the gameplay. There are like a lot of side quests and things to do in the world, and some people like to play a story, like the story while exploring the world. So if they just like they play the main game to get it over with, and then they start a new game, you know, to do all like the extra stuff, and while also replaying the story. Also, I think that the combat is just like very good in this game and satisfying, and I definitely think I will probably pick this game up to do some more of that wand work, you know. Though as far as the story goes, it doesn't really make me want to replay it all too much. It's just, like I said, it's just very simple, basic, and once you play it, you pretty much got it. So, though there are multiple endings to this game, that does boost the score for the replayability a little, because some people will want to come back to get like all the different endings, you know. Though as a whole, I don't like this story. It doesn't have that much extra to offer, and it isn't good enough to justify giving it a high score. Though another thing that brings the replayability down is that the game is pretty glitchy. And it's not even because the game just came out, because it's been out for a couple months now, you know? There was once when, like, for some reason, whenever I moved off of like a platform, it would say that I failed a quest, even though I wasn't in a quest. And then when I would click abandon quest, the screen would go like completely black. And then I would move around my joysticks and I could hear my character still walking around. And I'm speechless. Then besides that, I also found that a lot of times when I like first got into a combat situation, it would start getting like really laggy for some reason, even though it wasn't laggy before. Taking all of that into account, I can't really put the replayability that high, especially because of those bugs and glitches. If they ever fix these bugs, I will say so in the description if I remember. But for now, the gameplay it isn't good enough to cover for the story and the bugs and glitches. I give the replayability a 6.75 out of 10. Next up, we got art design. If you watched my Last of Us video, you know that I'm a sucker for some good art design. The world of Hogwarts Legacy, I feel, is beautifully done. Hogwarts looks amazing, Hogsmeade looks amazing, and all of the Highlands look amazing as well. I think that they did a good job designing the magical world of the wizarding world. I might talk some shit about Hogwarts like a bunch and like Harry Potter a bunch, but even I can't deny that the world looks pretty cool, and they portray that world well in this game. The character design is very good as well. I think we are living in a golden age right now when it comes to art design inside of games. I can't honestly think of like a recent game that has looked bad. All the facial features and the clothing that they designed for the characters looks really good. I don't know what it is, but I especially like Professor Fig's outfit. I don't know what it is. It looks sleek and cool. Overall, just really amazing. Then also the artwork that they did for all of like the menus inside the games are really good as well. I like the whole like field guide book theme that they had for like in the menus in this game. It just looks very rustic and appealing to look at and doesn't clash too much with like the true purposes of the menu. The final rating for Hogwarts Legacy's art design is a 10 out of 10. I don't see really any flaws with it. Okay, now, finally, last criteria. We got the graphics of the game, which actually, not that good. They definitely could have been better. I feel like everything like looks okay, but I feel like compared to some like of the other games that we have recently, it could have definitely looked more realistic. Like, I have seen games that look hyper realistic, and this game just still looks like a cartoon. I feel like that they could have done like a little bit better with like the shadows, but I do think they did a very good job with color and tone and like the tone of the game. It feels very much like a magical atmosphere, and also the color isn't too like one-dimensional either. Like they spread out the color pretty well. Though probably the biggest problem with the graphics in this game is the movement. The movement in this game feels like very chunky, and also it looks really weird when like the characters talk. I don't know, but the way that their mouths move just doesn't look natural. It actually kind of like, it bugged me a lot throughout the entire game. Anyways, taking all that into account, I think I'm going to have to give the graphics of this game a rating of 7 out of 10. Definitely could have been better. Okay, so before I say the final rating of Hogwarts Legacy, let's just recap all of the different scores that I gave each criteria. Gameplay, I gave a 9 out of 10. Story, I gave a 7 out of 10. Replayability, I gave a 6.75 out of 10. Art design, I gave a 10 out of 10. And graphics, I gave a 7 out of 10, giving Hogwarts Legacy a final rating of, drumroll please, a 8.06 out of 10. I feel like this is actually a very fair rating for this game. The gameplay was really good, but the story was lacking, and at the end of the day, you need both to make a good video game. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please consider pressing that like button, and if you want to see even more review videos for video games, subscribe to the channel. Okay, bye.